Everybody, and welcome to this webinar. We have an hour, a glorious hour, and I got to tell you, I'm excited because this is a topic that I really like to talk about, and that is how to use Class Companion to check for understanding. So what we're going to do here, though, before we actually get to that, before we actually dig in, I want you to take a look at a picture. I'm going to show it to you in just a second. It's going to be of a high school APUSH teacher standing in front of his students. And as you look at that picture, I want you to assume that it's the start of class and this teacher's already taken attendance. And then as you look at the picture, ask yourself, what do you think he's thinking? You'll see him standing there. What do you think he's thinking? Taking attendance, class is beginning. And to help you answer that question, I want you to keep the following in mind. The day before, he had his students sit through one of his period-long slideshows called Spanish Conquest of the Americas and the Columbian Exchange. And that slideshow not only contained slides with words on it, the content, so to speak, but also a number of short videos, several primary source excerpts, a few charts, a graph, and it even included a 6-minute and 56-second podcast. So there's your picture. Now ask yourself, what do you think he's thinking? What would you be thinking if you were standing in front of your students like that, knowing that you had covered all that content the day before? And if we were to open this up to the attendees and teachers all over the place, I'm sure we get all kinds of different answers. But now I want to tweak that just a little bit. And I want to show you a second picture. Now imagine that you're an administrator and you've come in at the start of this teacher's class, and your job is to evaluate the teacher on this particular day. What would you be thinking? What would you be asking yourself? Now, I've taught for 40 years. I just retired a year ago, May, and I've been in this teacher's position up here many, many times. Admin comes in, start of a period after I had taught something. My guess, regardless of what I might be thinking as I'm standing in front of those students, my guess is, and having talked to lots of administrators, this is more than a guess. Here's what they're thinking. Did the students that this teacher is now standing in front of, did they actually understand what the teacher presented yesterday? Will this teacher that I'm about to evaluate, again, we're looking at this from the admin's perspective, simply move on without checking for understanding, even though the research clearly shows that without it, learning doesn't last, or at the very least, learning isn't going to be quite as impactful? Third question, has this teacher never been told about the research, or is he just going to ignore it? And question number 4, if he is going to check for understanding, I wonder what strategies he will use to make sure yesterday's learning really sticks. Now, that admin probably already has a whole, what do we want to call this, set of suggestions in mind, ways before Class Companion that this teacher could check for understanding. I'm going to own up to you here right now. I was never very good at checking for understanding after a lesson, an entry ticket, if you will. 5 periods of the same class. There's a lot of work, especially if you want to make sure that your check for understanding doesn't get passed down to the end of the line, or you want to make sure that everybody's being checked. I knew it was important. I bought in, but I just found it was really hard to do, especially when we look down here at the last 3. A check for understanding where I'm going to place some MCQs, stimulus or non-stimulus, in front of my students. SAQs. And how about an essay to kick it up to a much greater level? So typically speaking, that admin, at least in the age before Class Companion, would be thinking this would be the strategies that the teacher should probably choose from. And sure, there are others, but something like this. Now, in the age of Class Companion, or since Class Companion came out, we can also use the tool to check for understanding. And how do you do that? Well, it's just a simple 3-step process. The first is you look over what you taught. You want to get a really clear idea of what you yourself taught, what was in that video and what were in those excerpts and so on. Chances are you produce the lesson, you already have a pretty good idea. Then simply decide what kind of check you want to give to your students. Will it be MCQs? Will it be SAQs? Will it be an essay? And then finally, to put that request into Class Companion and assign it, and then let Class Companion, once the students have responded to your check, work its magic, which is to give instant feedback to the students, number one. Give them the choice of disputing the feedback. No better way to get students to learn than to dispute feedback. And if there is feedback to be disputed. And then thirdly, to provide you with immediate insight as to who got it, who didn't get it, and then what can you do about it. So to show you how this will work, we're going to just walk through this a little bit, and we're going to start by exploring the slideshow itself. Now it's 40 some odd slides, and we're going to go through it real quickly, but I want you to see what's in there because it'll give you a better idea of how you can use Class Companion to check for understanding. So I'm going to click on this right now. And Brittany, I know you're off stage, and if for any reason you can't see this, would you let me know? But here we have the title page, Spanish Conquest of the Americas, Columbian Exchange. Teacher immediately shows a map where Spain is, and then the content. In an APUSH course, these are called the key concepts. That is what the students need to know. More key concepts, and both involving information the students need to know. Why they came, God, gold, glory, and gold, and the type of maritime technology. He shows them a video. He provides more content, a map, a couple of pictures that the students get to talk about, and then a video produced by very famous edu celebrity APUSH teacher, Steve Heimler, specifically on something called the Columbian Exchange. We're going to go through this a little faster now. More specific Spanish explorers, maps, some information of where they went, and then a relatively long video, which he says, hey, I think I just want you to watch this one because it's really, really good, 23 minutes. We're not going to take time in class on Cabrillo's journey. And then the Columbian Exchange. And he puts this image in front of them. And rather than share a lot of information, he just asks the students some questions. We go on, we get to see where they're located, or at least where the Spanish actually conquered, and then the effects of smallpox and the effects of the horse on the Native American coming over from the old world, and what the Native American did with the buffalo as a result of the horse, something called the encomiendicism. So you can see it goes on and on and on. And then at the last, and this is important, I want to show you, there's an additional piece of content. Because when the Spanish came, it led to a great debate between two individuals, Sepulveda and De las Casas. And this teacher in his slideshow puts the excerpts in there, the primary source, lets them kind of speak for themselves. All right, so now that we have seen and gotten a sense of the slideshow, let's just take this back to the beginning. Go back to my slideshow. And what are we going to do now? We're going to decide of this slideshow, what do we want to hold the kids accountable? So for starters, let's say the teacher decides, well, it says 10 here, but I'm going to shorten this. Otherwise, the AI can take something that's a little bit too long. How about 5 non-stimulus based MCQs over that portion of the slideshow that talks simply about their exploration and conquest? Not so much the other stuff, but the exploration and the conquest. So I'm going to click on this for a second. And what I have done is I've literally taken the content out of the slides and put it on this document. And I'm going to copy and paste all of it. And then I'm going to go back here to our checking for understanding slideshow, and I'm going to click on class companion. Again, we want to create 5 non-stimulus based MCQs over just that portion of the lecture, the lesson, if you will, Spanish, exploration, and conquest. So I'm going to click on class companion. Here's my home page. And we're going to scroll down here to my class. You'll have a class too, and I'm going to click on it, push. And then, as you can see, a lot comes up here.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
You're not seeing it. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to click on assignments because I want to give them an assignment. And now on add an assignment. And as you can see, when you're creating an assignment or you're wanting to provide your students with an assignment, you get 3 choices. You can generate the assignment with AI. You can import your own assignment, a file, even a PDF. Or you can go to the Class Companion content library, where not only Class Companion has created lots and lots of assignments for lots and lots of different courses, but so too have lots of teachers. What we're going to do is we're going to learn how to check for understanding using this tool, the Generate with AI. We'll be working with that almost exclusively today. I think we're going to work with it exclusively. So the first thing I'm going to do is, it says here, grade, standard, subject, that's all set. Type, we don't need that. I mean, we could pop that in there, but we don't need that. It's going to read the objective anyway. An objective in this case just means, what do you want the AI to do? So create 5 MCQs over the following. And now I'm going to just pop in the content. I could also have just saved as a PDF those slides and then dragged them in. But I prefer that I actually am going to create a separate doc with the content and copy and paste it. Just an approach I take. But you very easily could have just taken whatever slideshow you might be using, save it as a PDF, and drag the PDF. And then we click Generate and Review. Always takes a minute or so. And then you'll, if you have not ever explored Class Companion, you'll see, I'm not even sure what we're calling those, but everybody always gets a little chuckle out of them when they see it for the first time. And now we have the assignment. So it's titled Spanish Expansion, Colonization. Answer the following multiple choice questions. Which of the following was not a primary motive? Question number 1. And maybe you're not an APUSH teacher or a history teacher, but I'm just looking at these real quickly, and I know these are spot on. And I can assure you, for most other classes, they're going to be spot on too. That's the power, if you will, of Class Companion. The questions its AI produces are going to be questions that the kids need to know. And so there you have it, 5. If you don't like one of these questions, you just click on the box. You can delete it. You can replace it with another question. You can completely change a question around. That's how that works. And then you're going to publish it. But before we publish it, and publish it just means send it to your own library for use at some other point in time. You go to your library, say, oh, today's the day, and you send it to your students. But now let's take a look and preview this as a student. So which of the following was not a primary motive for Spanish exploration? I'm going to just close my eyes and pick one, and I'm going to submit it. Again, what we're doing is we're learning how to create checks for understanding over the content that is found in some kind of lecture, slideshow presentation, any degree of teaching that a teacher might want to do. And as you can see, it came up pretty quickly. Your choice to gain wealth through mining and plantations as something that was not a primary motive is actually incorrect. And it explains it to you. And it will do that for every single one of the MCQs from the student. Now down here, this is a really cool little feature. This is what's called ditto. So let's go down here to, I'll just take number 2. Let's say, and you're in complete control of this. You can turn ditto on, you can turn ditto off, you can give it some specific instructions, but let's click that on for a second. And it says, hi, I'm Ditto, your AI tutor. Now remember, you've assigned it. This is from the student perspective. So you have assigned the MCQs to the students, and then you decide whether or not you want them to have access to this AI tutor. Chat with me to explore this topic. Ask for hints. Get help. I may make mistakes, so double check what I say. But let's just take a look here. How about you have a student and they're looking at this question number 2 and they say, my goodness gracious, technological, 5-syllable word. Did I do that right or is it 4? I think I counted wrong. Maybe it's 5. And I don't know what that means. So they can go to Ditto, explain what technological means. All right, let's see if Ditto does that for us. There. Great question. Technological relates to tools, machines, or methods. I mean, we all know that when any given class, kids have different vocabulary, different ability to understand the words of a particular question. If you believe that this is in students' best interest, to when you check for understanding, to give them an opportunity to be able to understand what the question is asking in a way that works for them better, then this is fabulous. It's a fabulous thing. And I do it sometimes, I don't do it sometimes. It all depends. But let's just try one more. Well, let's just try one more. What if you said, okay, I have a lot of Spanish speakers in my class. Can it translate the question? Well, if I could write Spanish, there we go. All right, let's see if it does that. Now, this is interesting. I can help you think about this question, but now, okay, so it worked for me yesterday and it's worked for me before. I'm not sure. Let's try it differently. How should I do this? Rewrite the question in Spanish. So I'm not really sure why that's not working at this particular moment. I'd have to go back in and check my settings. Maybe in getting ready for this presentation, I somehow shut that off or failed to turn it on. But it will do that as well. It will help with vocabulary. It can translate a question into a language of the student's choice. It can give additional hints. It can go on and on. That is the Ditto feature. So what we have done here is we have now explored how you can create a check for understanding, multiple choice, non-stimulus based. And the beauty of this that I found is, again, if you have 5 classes, so I create one assignment, and then I just go back into Class Companion and I say, hey, do another one. Don't give me the exact same questions. And very quickly, it'll create a second one and do a third one. Why? I want one for one class and one for another and one for the third. So at least the questions aren't being passed down the line. And then I get a truer sense of who has learned what. This is not a presentation today on the kind of insights that you would get. I want to just really familiarize you with how this tool works to create the checks and what it looks like from the student end. But yes, I could go back up here. Let's go back and click on, let's see, one more back here. There we go. And then click on Insights. And if I've actually assigned it to the students and they've responded, it will not only tell me how the class did, but it will also help identify those students, as I said earlier, who did really well, did well, did not so well, and everything in between. So let's go back to the slideshow now. And if you can't see it, Brittany's going to help us. Whoops, let's go back that one. There we go. So we took care of this one. Let's do this second check. Let's create 3 stimulus-based SAQs, 3 stimulus-based. So I'm going to click on this again and get my content. Oops, I'll come back here now. I'll go to Class Companion, and we'll start this all over again. Now you're going to get the idea. We'll go to the assignments. We'll add an assignment. We'll generate the assignment with AI. And now I'm going to say, now I want 3 SAQs, okay? I want the short answer questions, SAQs. I want all 3 to begin with a stimulus. This is not to say that each has to begin. Just that to start off, show me the stimulus. then have all three SAQs that follow relate. I failed typing. Okay. Let's see if it can do that. Now, what I could have said to the AI, and under normal circumstances, I would and have, and I realize it's very controversial, but I want my students to learn. I might say to, okay, look, I know that you may not be able to produce a perfect map, or you may not be able to find a primary source when you create your stimulus. Go ahead and create one. Make sure that you mention that it's fictional, okay? Because this is an exercise in learning, and let the student go from there. So in this particular case, I think that's exactly what it's done. I should have said, make sure that you cite, you give us a make believe that we know it's fictional, and you do a source. But Spanish established vast claims in the Caribbean, blah blah blah. Their empire in the America became the largest and most powerful. Okay, fine. Explain one economic motive that drove Spanish exploration, colonization of the Americas. Okay, so here it didn't quite follow, and it was my prompt wasn't really clear. And you guys all know that you have to be real clear with your prompts to get what you want. I would just back this out and do it again. But now we've got a second, if you will, stimulus and a question, and a third stimulus and a question. I could very easily back this out, give it more instruction, might even drag in an image. Say, for example, that one you saw of the Columbian Exchange. I could have done that. It's a nice way to do it, or a photograph of one of the boats or one of the maps, and then said, hey, create the SAQ off of that. Now, let's just say we don't want to preview right now as a student, but let's say we're going to publish this. We got all excited. We go, okay, that works. I'm okay with that. I'm going to publish it. And what happens? It says, uh-oh, you're not ready to publish this. You first got to choose a rubric. You first have to choose a rubric. So I'm going to add a rubric. Didn't need to add a rubric for the MCQs, but I definitely need to do it for the SAQs. And so again, I have these three choices. Will I generate the rubric with the help of Class Companions AI? Will I import a rubric of my own? Or will I go find one in the content library? And just like with the assignments, Class Companion has created a whole host of rubrics for all kinds of different SAQs, and so too have a number of teachers. Well, I want to see how this looks if I generate it with AI. So create, and at this point, I mean, it's endless. We can go a number of different ways. So let's just try one. Create a 5-point rubric, okay, where a 3 would be a great score, or at least a passing score, be a passing score, and 4 and 5 going above that. Let's just see if it'll work, okay? And then we have to decide, well, do we want spelling and grammar and all of that to count? We can completely personalize it in the history classes, especially at the high school level, world, US, and so on. History doesn't count, grammar doesn't count. This will probably tell us that in this rubric it will, but let's see what it looks like. Okay, there you go. So there's your rubric. And let's just say we're pleased with that. We can also go in and we can change everything, add criterion completely at a teacher's choosing, but we're going to finish it just so we can have it. And now what can we do? Now we can publish it. It goes into our library, and when we are ready, it goes out to the students. That's how that'll work. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the slideshow. All right. And here's the fun one. Okay. Here's a real fun one. So check for understanding. I give my students some multiple choice questions. We've got that. We've got that. All we need to do is go to the AI, plug in the content, and then tell how many questions we want. Simple. We want to kick it up a notch. We want our students writing, but we don't want to make it overly complicated, what we call it stimulus based. Oh, okay, we can do that too. But what about if we're watching a video? What about if we're watching a video? So here's my friend Steve Heimler, and Steve, as I said earlier, incredibly popular. He produces these videos for all kinds of different classes. Let's just listen just for a second, and I'm assuming you can see that, everybody.
History. Now, we've been going through Unit 1 of the AP US History curriculum. And in the last video, I talked about Spanish colonialism in the Americas and ended by mentioning the Columbian Exchange. And in this video, that's what I'm about to explain up. So let's get to it. Okay, so the Columbian Exchange. What is it? So glad you asked. The Columbian Exchange was the transfer of food, animals, minerals, people, and diseases between Africa, Europe, and the Americas. And I know what you're thinking. So what? But this was a really big deal because this exchange fundamentally transformed the societies and the economies and the environments of all three of the continents that I just mentioned.
All right. So now we have a sense of who Steve Heimler is. And we've got this video. And in this slideshow, this video was shown. Lots of people, a lot of teachers will put a Steve Heimler video before their kids. And now the question becomes, well, did they really understand it? You know, Steve talks sometimes a little bit fast, and sometimes he interjects a little bit of humor and some eye rolling, and he's got these catchphrases that sometimes cause kids to drift. How are we going to take this video and then create questions from it? Well, the first thing is to recognize that if you scroll down below most YouTube videos, not all, but below most YouTube videos, and you click where there's this little description and the word more, if you scroll down a little bit further, what you're going to see at some point, it's going to say show transcript. Show transcript. So if we click on show transcript, up here, top right-hand corner of your page will come up the transcript, but it's going to have these timestamps. And yes, they can stay there, but I prefer to take them off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy Steve's entire transcript. And then I go back to Class Companion. Please let me know if you can't see that. And I'm going to create an assignment, generate with AI. And I forgot what we said. Let me just check real quickly. What did we decide to do? Non-stimulus based MCQs. That's fine. Great. And I'm going to say, okay, create for me, let's just say 5 non-stimulus MCQs for Heimler's video on Columbian Exchange. Okay. And again, I pop in the content. Let's see what it looks like. There we go. Columbian Exchange, multiple choice review. Look at that. Which of the following best describes the Columbian Exchange? Great question. Which crop introduced from the Americas to Europe had the most significant impact on diets? Yeah, that was the potato. Great question. What was the primary reason for drastic decline in Native American population because of the Columbian Exchange? The smallpox, and so on. Now, I'm going to go back here, and I said, hey, this was a great question, but I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, all right, you know what? Yeah, a great question. But remember, the course was U.S. history. So I say, well, usually we're not going to focus on something that came out of the New World and affected life in the Old World. So I just click on this, and I delete it, as I said earlier. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I go back, and I say to do it again, but this time, focus on something that came from the Old World and had the greatest impact in the New World, or a New World product, say, for example, tobacco, that allowed the colonists to make a considerable amount of money and sustain themselves over here, something like that. I'll change it around a little bit. And now, as you can see, we have the Heimler. We can do the same thing we did earlier. Let's go back here for a second. There we are. Hopefully, if you can't see it, let me know. We can do the same thing with the videos, and we can do this with almost all of the videos on PBS Learning Media. If you can find them online, you probably are going to get a transcript, though there are a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions, and those exceptions are pretty noteworthy. So you might bump into something there. But for most of the videos that we use in school for school-related purpose, you will be able to access that transcript, pop it in. And so therefore, with Heimler's video, we also could have said, hey, create for me some stimulus-based SAQs. Now let's go to the next step, okay? I want to bring you back to the slideshow where I showed you that there were these two guys, De las Casas and Sepulveda. And they had this argument going on when the Spanish came over here. And it divided up not only Spanish society, but it divided up Europe. How should the Native Americans be treated? How should they be treated? They had this argument. And let's just say that, as I told you, that you decided to share with your kids a podcast. You had them listen to a podcast. Instead of actually teaching that and making it all very, very clear, you said, look, there was this debate. Here are 5 excerpts or whatever the number there were. And I want you just to look them over, read them for yourself, and then we'll move on. Let's say you did that or something like that. And then you said, but we're also going to hear a podcast. So, oopsie, well, that didn't work. There's the script. And, oh, yeah, okay, fine. We can do it that way, too. Yeah, oh, here we are. It popped up. Okay. Let's do it that way. Can you see that Clash of Empires, the New World Humanity debate? If you can't, please let me know. So I'm not sure how many of you have yet explored what is called Google Notebook LM. Google Notebook LM. But this is Google Notebook LM. And what you do is you pop in the content, the content of the podcast, the transcript of what you would like to have be in the podcast. You simply say, I want you to create a podcast. You might also be able to say, I want it to be in simpler terms, or I want it to, and you put some parameters on it. Now I want you to just hear what Google Notebook can produce. And if you can't hear it, please let me know.
All right, let's get right into it. We are going way back, stepping into the 16th century, right into this huge, high-stakes moral battle that was raging inside the Spanish Empire as it was spreading across the Americas. You see, this wasn't just about conquering new lands. It was a fight over the very definition of what it means to be human. And at the absolute core of this whole thing was one pretty brutal question that leaders, thinkers, and even the Spanish king had to wrestle with. Were the native peoples they encountered savages, fit only to be conquered? Or were they human beings with souls who deserved basic rights and respect? The answer to that question was going to change the fate of millions of people. So as the Spanish Empire grew with this incredible, almost shocking speed, it wasn't just gold and silver flowing back to Spain. It was also stories, really horrific.
Okay. And if we listen to that some more, this podcast will put right before the students Sepulveda de las Casas. It will reveal excerpts that the students read. And it will do it in this format. And if you say, okay, that was pretty cool, but what I'd like to see is, let's see if it can be led by a guy. I mean, you can go a number of different ways. Here's a little different one.
All right, let's get right into it. This isn't just some dusty old history lesson. We're talking about a massive intellectual and moral battle that exploded during the Spanish conquest of the Americas. This was a war of ideas that had literally life-or-death consequences for millions of people. At the very heart of this whole thing.
Okay, so I'm just trying to show you that there's these different approaches, not to move too much away from what our goal is here today. But what you do is you can take that. We'll go back now to our slideshow right here. You can take that transcript or the notes from it, and I'm going to just show you now what that might look like. There you are. Okay, there. And here are the excerpts like this. These are the excerpts. This is the information that the podcast is going to focus on. And we go back to Class Companion. Right. Back it out again. And let's see if it can do this, okay? So we're going to add an assignment to my history class using the Generate with AI. And we're going to say, okay, I want, let's see if we can do it right this time. I want 3 MCQs. I want it all starting with 1 excerpt. Okay? And then all 3 MCQs relating to that excerpt. Let's see if I did it right this time. I always usually have to play with it a little bit. There we go. Oh, let's see. Aha. Okay. So this was interesting. Again, it worked yesterday. I don't know if you can see this on your screen. Your request may fall outside school or district guidelines. Consider rephrasing your request. And the reason for that, obviously, is because of the harshness of these quotes. I'm thinking that one viewed the Native American as very primitive. The other viewed them at best as a child. That was the debate. It was never about whether Native Americans and Spanish Europeans should be equal. It was, are they like children and therefore, should be allowed to grow into adulthood without being excessively punished, or are they just barbarians? And what the class companion AI, and it's a good lesson here, is saying. And yesterday, when I practiced this, I only put in one of the. Let's see if it does that, or it will pop up again the same way. Always living and learning. Okay, see, it did work. So there, okay, now you have your 1-day Sepulveda excerpt, and Sepulveda was the one that had the harshest view. And now you have the questions, okay? According to Sepulveda, which of the following best characterizes his view of Native Americans? They were involved in constant and brutal warfare with each other. Therefore, they're not children. And it was a really, really harsh view. European debates about the justification for the conquest and treatment, which of the following best explains the broader context? Nice, 3 nice questions. So we can now move on from here. We'll go back to ground ourselves. There we are. We've looked at 4 different ways to create checks for understanding. How do you do it from a podcast? How do you do it from a YouTube video? And then how do you just do it from a slideshow? We've also learned that you can, with Class Companion, if you want your a check for understanding, you can create stimulus-based and you can create non-stimulus-based. But let's say you're the kind of teacher who really wants to kick it up a notch. Let's see what Class Companion can do with this. And the check number 5, you actually want them to do an essay. So what do? We go back again, grab our content, and come back to Class Companion. And I'm not seeing, there it is. Okay, there we are. We'll go back out here. Whoops. Okay, fine. And now you say, now give me an essay like this, okay? And we want to be a little bit clear on the prompt. In AP classes, the prompts are pretty complicated. We say, well, this is just for a 8th grade, 7th grade kind of a history class. I want the prompt to begin with the word explain. Okay. Let's see what the prompt looks like. So background information, we could take that out. And there's your question, okay? Explain. So way more complicated than I was hoping, but analyze the motives for Spanish exploration and conquest in the Americas. Way too complicated. The methods of Spain, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to delete this as well. In fact, I'll just go back out and I would say to it, hey, way too complicated. start all over again and simply say, I need a very simple essay question. Okay. No longer than actually not a question, essay prompt. That might have been the problem. No longer than a few sentences. Okay. All right, let's see here. Did I say start with explain? Yeah. And it should start with the word explain. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now we got it. Explain how Spanish motives and methods of colonization shaped the societies and economies of the Americas in the 16th century. Now, it's better, but for me personally, this is motives and methods. That's two questions. That's two separate questions. And then shape the societies and economies. That's two more questions. So I'm still finding it very, very complicated. In fact, a flat out compound question. I don't believe compound questions are particularly fair. So I go back and I just give the AI further instruction. I don't want a compound question. Or I just tell it, hey, explain how Spanish motives shaped the Americas in the 16th century, or Spanish methods of colonization shaped the Americas in the 16th century. A little broader. But as you can see, let's just say I get really excited about this question. It produced it, fabulous. I go, oh, great, I want to publish it right off. Same problem as before. It's going to say, hey, Paccone, you got to add a rubric, but not up here where it says short answer, down here because we know it's an essay and I want to generate with AI because that's the tool, and I pop in whatever I want that rubric to say. So let's be real clear here, because the only other thing that we haven't really touched on yet is, can the AI take an existing rubric, a PDF or even a screenshot, plug it in, and can it read it? And the answer is yeah, it can, so that you're not having to type in everything from scratch. And also, we should point out that when you are creating your rubric down here, it says check for grammar and spelling, and you can, of course, turn that off, and all AP history teachers will always have that turned off. Or you can just give the instructions when you create the rubric on your own. So we go back to our slideshow. There you have it. How to check for understanding with Class Companion. Great for MCQs, great for SAQs, also works for essays, and then everything completely and absolutely personalized. Let's go back here. At this point, Brittany, do you want to come on and see if there are any questions, and I will back this out? Okay. Well, then we finished a little bit early, and I think we'll just leave it at that, unless there are questions. Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope you found that of value. I use it a lot. I have retired, but I do have a tutoring business. I tutor a lot of AP kids, both social studies and ELA, not just history, but AP Human and Psych and Lang and Lit. And honestly, I use this checking for understanding feature a lot with the kids I tutor. I mean, if not every session, certainly every other session. I want to know, did they get what was taught? And I want to know, not just with the end of unit exam, I want to know every step along the way, because the more time that I put between finding out what they actually know and the actual assessment, the more difficult it becomes to correct and get them to know and learn what they need to learn. All right, then. I wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.